Of course, we all know Lily Phillips was one of the OF creators who just seems to take things way too far, and the situation has just evolved, and now I, myself, have a bit of an understanding as to why she could be the way that she is, right? Now, obviously, you know, Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue have forever been competing against one another. They started out as friends, they turned rivals, and, you know, they seem to be trying to outdo each other in any capacity to do whatever they can. Now, Lily Phillips has just sat down on Newsnight on BBC to do an interview with Victoria Derbyshire, who is obviously a presenter on the BBC and stuff like this, to talk about her career, let's say, right, in OF. And there's one part, I'm going to go over the whole interview on another video, but there's one part in particular that obviously is gripping the attention of a lot of people. And as someone who was a teacher and has done multiple safeguarding courses, this explains a hell of a lot, right? A hell of a lot. And I'm gonna info dump on you because I feel like I've got expertise in this knowledge, in this field. So I'm gonna info dump on you and I'm gonna, you know, just let it run. But the part I'm referencing for this is the fact that Lily Phillips has said that she basically started watching, like, adult content, let's call it, at the age of 11. Now, obviously, that is a very, very young age. Now, most kids at 11, right, haven't even hit secondary school yet. This is, like, in the UK, that's, like, year 6. So that's, like, before we even hit Key Stage 3. But they're still in, like, Key Stage 2. So, you know, this is quite a young, impressionable age. And, you know, this girl's at this age, most kids are, you know, playing with, you know, playing out with friends, I don't know, playing Barbie. I don't know what kids do these days, but, or like, you know, watch YouTube and stuff. But Lily Phillips was watching adult content, which obviously is highly inappropriate for her age, but this is the clip in total, and then I'm going to go on to talk about it, because there's just a lot to break down here.
I probably watched first when I was maybe 11, and so I've always known about it. I've always knew it was a thing, and I always thought it was very normal to watch.
Right, but if you started watching it at 11,
yeah,
I mean, that is so young.
Yeah.
And you say it's normal. Can you describe how it has influenced you and your brain and your outlook on sex?
You know what? It actually made me really sex confident and learn a lot of things. I mean, that's mostly how I learned through pornography. And I do think it has a positive effect on me, just in terms of like understanding things a little bit more.
Right. But as we know, what we see in porn can be extreme. Is not normal.
It depends what type of porn you're watching. That's what I would say.
Okay. And when you look back and reflect on the fact that you had access to this pornography and were looking at it from the age of 11, and not just you, any Gen Z who's got a smartphone.
Yeah.
Does that suggest to you that maybe your generation has been let down by politicians or the tech companies or even parents?
I think it's hard because this is a part of life, and I don't.
But
think
not when you're 11.
Well, I think you should be learning from it from that age. I do believe that, because that's when you start to think about things like that.
But learning,
maybe not. Maybe not learning from, but I do think understanding it more from that age would be helpful.
Is there a direct link between you watching as you grew up and the decisions you've made to do what you do now?
I think maybe. I mean, I don't know a life without, so maybe.
Right, obviously there's a lot of concerning sentiments and statements within that short clip of this interview, right? And it's usually in the UK, it's usually around the ages of 11, 12, you know, maybe, I think they're starting to introduce it a little bit sooner. Sex education becomes a thing, right? So, you know, kids are taught about, you know, safe practices and all the rest of it. Now, as someone who's done multiple safeguarding courses to work with children, alarm bells are fucking ringing and red flags are going off absolutely everywhere with every sentence that she just stated. There are so many issues with what's gone on there, right? And there's so many like things where it's like it can have really detrimental effects on a young, impressionable mind that will stick for life. And it makes so much sense as to why she's chosen this career path and why it's completely normal for her to think that doing 100 guys in the back door in 24 hours is completely fine and justified and normal. When people who watch these videos that I make, and myself included, will sit there and be like, this is not normal behaviour. This is completely abnormal behaviour. So let me just give you a bit of a rundown, right? So exposure to like this kind of content from such a young age, like at the age of 11, can have some serious and lasting impacts on a developing mind. Because let's not forget, this mind would be developing, and it continues to develop at least until the age of like 25. That's when your frontal cortex starts to kick in, right? Now, there's multiple different things. You've got behavioral effects, you've got cognitive and emotional development issues, you've got social development, you've got mental health issues potentially, and you know, we'll also talk about why this matters. So let's start with the cognitive and emotional development. So there's like this distorted understanding of sex and relationships. So this kind of adult content often portrays unrealistic and aggressive or purely physical interactions, and kids, you know, at that age could grow up thinking that that's what intimacy is supposed to look like. You've also got some emotional desensitization, because constant exposure to that could also reduce emotional responsiveness and, you know, making real-world relationships feel less meaningful or harder to connect with. And then you've also got confusion or possible anxiety. So without proper context, kids might feel shame, guilt, or fear after viewing explicit content, not knowing how to process it. Now, obviously, Lily Phillips has said in her interview that it made her very confident. So it's obviously gone the opposite way. But how confident is too confident, and where do the boundaries come in? You know, obviously, like, everyone should have those boundaries set in place where it's like, this is my body, this is what, like, but even, oh my, like, my lord, I'm about to say it, but even Bonnie Blue has come out and said that she has her boundaries when it comes to this kind of thing. She won't do people in the back door, or she won't have people do her in the back door. That's one thing that she will never do, or doesn't want to do right now, because that's her boundary. Like, if Bonnie Blue's got a boundary, then, and you don't, then that is a serious red flag. Now, let's talk about the, like, emotional and behavioural effects that this could potentially have. So, obviously, we've got risky behaviour, and that's something that we've seen with Lily Phillips with these outlandish challenges. So, early exposure is linked to earlier risk of sexual behaviour in adolescence, which, you know, she's a very young girl, so that makes total sense, sorry. You've got addictive patterns, and some children may become compulsive users as their brains get hooked on the dopamine spikes that, you know, this kind of content could, you know, put onto you. And also, let's look at it this way. Someone like Lily Phillips, who's been exposed, now, this is all hypothetical, of course. Like, I would love to sit down and pose these questions to her. I think she would literally be so hard to reach out to, but I would love to sit and talk to her about this and be like, because she, and again, this is why I'm stating that this is all hypothetical, because, you know, I could be getting this wrong. I'm just going based off of my kind of knowledge. Her experience of what everyone else deems to be quite normal, you know, safe and, you know, content, like, sex, for her just might not cut it. So she might need to feel like to have these huge, like, crazy experiments just to get that kind of gratification that other people wouldn't necessarily need to get, if that makes sense. So, like, you know, she might need to go above and beyond to do this. And then, like I've stated before, we've obviously got poor boundaries as well. So they might mimic what they see or push those boundaries with peers, not fully understanding consent or respect. Again, she does 100 guys in one sitting. She does 100 guys in the back door, for example, in one sitting. Those aren't typical normal boundaries that people have in place. And like I say, when you've got people like Bonnie Blue who've got, like, boundaries in place, red flags should be alarming. Then we've obviously got social development, so, you know, there'll be could potentially be relationship struggles, and, you know, that could skew how they view gender roles, affection, and how, like, you know, mutual respect works, causing problems with future friendships or relationships. And you've got isolation, so kids might feel embarrassed or afraid to talk about what they've seen, which could lead to secrecy or social withdrawal. Again, I'm not saying this is the case for someone like Lily Phillips, but this is what could possibly happen to a young impressionable mind. And then, you know, there's a possibility of mental health issues. So, you know, you've got depression and anxiety, and you could also have low self-esteem. Like, you know, they might, like, kids could possibly compare themselves to what they're seeing, and, you know, the potential unrealistic bodies that some of these, you know, adult actresses and actors have, or the performance they see could, you know, degrade their own self-worth. Now, obviously, you're probably wondering why the info dump and why is this so important. Now, I've had it drilled into me as a teacher, right, that from a safeguarding point of view, that and this, again, I need to preface that this is not the case for Lily Phillips, but this is just from what I've been taught and based off of what I've seen in some instances. Over-sexualized children who are, you know, take a great interest in that kind of stuff, can sometimes be children that have been abused, like, in that kind of way. And they become so desensitized to that kind of behavior that they think, like, I'm not gonna, it's hard to not cross professional boundaries and, like, bring in case scenarios, but I'm sure you can put two and two together and understand where I'm going with this. I've seen this kind of behaviors before, and it's really disturbing to see children of that age who are kind of geared towards that kind of thing that you wouldn't typically expect to see until they at least hit puberty, right? It's a really bizarre situation to see, and it's the red flags of potential abuse, and it's the first sign, and then, you know, usually you take it from there. But I'm not saying that is the case for Lily Phillips. I'm not stating that she was abused in any capacity, but it's just something that does happen. Now, I've obviously covered Lily Phillips in quite a great detail in every kind of cover, and everyone's probably looking at this like, oh, but when I saw this, I felt like I got a position to educate people on this in case they weren't aware, and I feel like I would be missing, you know, a trick by, or, like, you know, doing a bit of a disservice by not kind of highlighting this, not just looking at it like, oh, she watched porn from the age of 11, that's disgusting, that's messed up, the parents have gone wrong. But actually, there's so much more to it than that, like, especially on a young impressionable mind. Like, this can literally brain rot to a degree. But ultimately, what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Like I say, this is all hypothetical stuff to do with Lily Phillips, but some of it does kind of fit in with the behaviours that we've seen. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Yeah, and I'll speak to you later. Peace.